Welcome back to the mini-series in which I talk you guys through what brands, color and palettes you should pick for your first palette. This is episode 2 and I'm going to talk to you guys about what colors you should go for. This is my favorite bit and I hope you guys enjoy it. In terms of what colors you should buy for your first palette or any palette, there's so many options and it's so much fun, but when it's your first palette and you've never had a palette before, it is hugely overwhelming. So I'm going to talk you through what options you have. First one, and this is the one I went with and I really enjoyed it, is just buy whatever color you want. Just go to an art store, pick an affordable brand. When I did this, I was in Japan. I went to Sekaido, which is an amazing art supply shop. If you don't know about Sekaido, Google it, YouTube it, you can see how amazing it is. And Holbein is about $2-3 a 15mm tube over there. And it's ridiculously cheap. And they have all the colors. And what I did was I went there and I just picked all the colors that took my fancy. And this was the palette that I created. Was it? I just picked whatever colors, and you can see there's a lot of colors that I've never ever ended up using. So I bought the 5mm tube ones, I think. Yeah, I bought the 5mm tube ones because I didn't know what I was doing. And there's a lot of opaque colors that I don't read. I'm a lot more transparent paint kind of person, but I had so much fun putting together this palette and it got me to buy my first set of watercolors. And I kind of knew like you should have the rainbow in there, but you can also see the trend that I don't buy many neutrals and I still don't. I much prefer the brighter colors, but this was so much fun. Absolutely loved doing it. And it still has a very soft spot on my on my heart. But I don't have this palette anymore because it was hugely impractical. And that will happen to you as well, in that you buy a set of paints and very rarely people stay with the first palette that they ever buy. You know, it's like first boyfriends and girlfriends. They don't tend to stay with I mean, some people do and it's great, but a lot of people don't. And this is the same, but just like your first love, I still have a very soft spot for this palette. It was hugely impractical. I like using big brushes. I didn't know that at the time. So half pans, because this was in a half pan, wasn't practical at all. And the colors kept mixing with each other because my brushes were too big for half pans and stuff. But I still loved it. I did use that palette when I did a challenge of painting 10 paintings a day for a whole month. I don't recommend doing that challenge because it's crazy. I suffered from a huge burnout, but it was fun and I got to learn what colors I actually like to paint with, because the colors that you might like to see may not be the same colors that you like to paint with. And it was a great way to figure this out. The pros to just buying whatever paint you like is you're going to have fun, a lot of fun. The con is that you do need a substantial amount of budget to be able to just buy whatever color you want, because normally if you're going into painting and you like color and watercolor, it's because you love color and you're not going to settle on a handful of paints, are you? You know, you're going to be like me and you're going to buy a whole bunch. So let's hope that you have access to paints that are affordable. Like Holbein in Japan was really cheap for me, so I could afford to do this. Or you have a good amount of budget. Also, you're probably going to grow out of that palette pretty quickly and you just got to be ready for that so that it doesn't hold you back later on. The second way of choosing colors for your first palette, and this is great for people with limited budget and they just want to buy the first few paints, but they want to cover the maximum amount of colors that they can have, or you want to learn how to mix colors really well, then I recommend the split primary set. And the split primary set is just 6 colors and it's two sets of basically reddy color, yellowy color, and bluey color. And this is an example of a split primary. So these ones here on the diagonal are the colors you buy. You buy two yellows, one that's like a little bit orangey and one that's like a lemon yellow kind of color. And then you get two reddish pinkish color. You get like a magenta, which is a more of a cool red, and then like an orangey red. And then you have the two blues. You use one that's like a bluey blue. I know that's not a technical term. I'm trying not to use technical terms because this video is for beginners. And then the other blue is more of like a tropical sea kind of blue. And what this will allow you to do is help you make really clean color mixes and all of the colors you will ever need. You can create all the colors you will ever need out of these 6 colors and create really clean versions of them. And if you want to get to know more about split primary, because this video will be hugely long if I go through the advantages of them, I will link up here to a video I made about split primaries, what they're good for and stuff. But this is great if you just want to have a little palette, you can only afford a handful of paints, or you really want to learn how color works and how to create any color you want, then I highly recommend this one. Obviously, if you are the type that's going to go for the first option of buying whatever color, this is going to kill you. So these are going to be very different set of people that go for these two as their first palette. Third way of buying colors for your palette is the color wheel palette. And there's a couple of different versions out there. This is the Stephen Quiller's one. And as you can see, it's the colors around the color wheel that basically covers all the rainbow. And this is great for strategically buying all the colors that you're going to need. There's not going to be anything missing. But this is obviously a lot of colors. It's 28 colors, which is a lot. So the color wheel palette I personally use is a system that I created that is a more pared down version of that. And that is 12 colors that hits all the spot around the color wheel. And the 12 colors consist of 6 pairs of colors that neutralize each other. And I do explain why this is great in a video, which I will link up here. But basically, if you want to learn color theory and how to mix colors, but 6 colors, you know, the split primary palette seems a little bit restricting. You want a little bit more convenience colors, then I highly recommend choosing this one. You just need to buy 12 colors. And I will, of course, leave links down below to what colors that you can buy for those. On the colors I would personally pick, I have the core one, I have the M. Graham one sorted. I can't just list all the brands because I have to test every single one of them to make sure that the pairs neutralize each other properly. So I'm still working on that. As I come up with new ones, I will update lists. But this is the system I go with as a framework for my own palette. I pick these colors and then I add other colors that I want afterwards, and I highly recommend this. I show you videos on my color theory series, how to use the color wheel palette and what it's good for and things, so I highly recommend you check that video out. The fourth way of choosing the paints for your color palette is to copy another artist's palette. So for example, this is Carlene Holman's palette that I put together when I first took her course. This is Yeo Cheng's palette that I put together when I did her course. And I personally tend to do this when I'm taking a painting course and they have a set of colors that they recommend because they're looking for particular effects and you're trying to learn how to use the colors that they use. So I highly recommend it for that. But also if you just have an artist that you really like their colors, then just scroll through their Instagram or there's any social media they have. Most artists tend to show somewhere on their social media what colors they use, because we're all passionate about the colors we use, and we have pet colors that we absolutely love, and we love to show everyone else the colors that we absolutely love. So there's usually like a photo or two, and you can figure it out from there, or they'll talk about a particular color that they really like. So what I'm basically doing is recommending you socially media stalk them and find out what colors they use. If they're like a really established painter and they do a lot of teaching, they might even have a website where they sell their paints. For example, I have an Amazon store with a page that's just the colors I have on my studio palette, so that you can just buy it in one place. Or I know Stephen Cruller has his own website with his own set of paints that he sells. So that is another way of finding out at least what colors they use, if not actually buying the set of colors that they sell. Fifth way of picking your first palette is to just buy a pre-made palette like this. This is the Rembrandt's Luxury Pocket Box, and I'm sure you've seen lots and lots of sets like this in your local art stores and online stores. They're a great way of grabbing a whole bunch of colors that will have some thought put into why picking those colors. It might be for different reasons, but most will have decent range of colors, and they're a great place. If you're like, I don't even know what colors to choose, I can't even do that, I just need somebody to show me what colors to buy, then I highly recommend this, because you only have to make one purchase, you only have to make one decision, and you get 12 colors in one go without having to worry about each very specific colors. The pros of this are obviously that you don't have to think so much about what colors to buy. The cons of this is that there will come a time where you grow out of this palette, but that's like with any palette, because this is designed for general public and general use. And as you get better and more experienced with your watercolor, you will get to a point where you want to specialize in a certain topic or theme or colors or style, and that will be the time for you to change up what palette and what colors you have on your palette then. Sets tend to come in either tubes or pans. This one is in obviously a pan, but you can have like a box of tubes instead. Either is fine. If you're going for the box of tubes, then you will have to get another palette, empty palette for you to pour your paints into. But it's just personal preference rather than which is better. The one tip I do have in buying a pre-made set as your first paint set is to probably not go for more than 16 colors in the set, because it gets very, very overwhelming very easily. I bought a 40 color Sennelier set that's supremely expensive, and I basically never used it as a beginner because it was overwhelming to have that many colors, and I just didn't know what to do with them. Generally, most people settle somewhere between 20 and 30 colors, and any more than that is just way too many colors. Some people thrive on that, but as a beginner, I recommend sticking to about 16 colors, get to know them, and then try out other colors that takes your fancy, rather than buying a big set, investing in it, and then just finding it far too formidable and overwhelming, and it scares you to use it. And the final way of figuring out what colors you want for your first palette is just ask a friend. If you have another friend that does watercolor, they will be more than happy and super excited to put together a palette for you. And I know many fellow pigment nerds get super excited when they're like, oh, I have a friend who wants to get into new watercolor, I'm going to put together a palette for them. By the way, if you have those kind of friends, they're probably going to do that for you anyway, whether you ask them or not, because it's such a exciting thing for us to introduce a new person into our favorite medium and our favorite colors. And I'm telling you all this because it feels like you're asking a lot from a person to put together a palette for you, and you're aware of the expense and stuff, but bearing in mind that like putting together a palette only requires a little bit of paints that they already have, so it's no skin off their nose, and it's an exciting thing. We love inducting people to it, so please don't hesitate to ask your friends, hey, I want to start doing watercolor, but I don't know which color. Could you please put together a palette for me? Or just say, hey, you know, I want to buy some paints. Could you come to the art store with me? Trust me, we all love inducting new people, and especially friends that we care about, into the magical cove that is the art supply store. You're going to have so much fun and they're going to love doing it, so don't hesitate doing that either. That is it for what colors should you get for your first palette. I hope it was helpful and not too overwhelming. It's a lot of options and you're probably going to try all of them at some point in your artist journey. Just pick the one that appeals to you as your first palette, that isn't overwhelming. The biggest thing to watch out for is if it intimidates you, you're probably not going to use it. So go for the ones that doesn't intimidate you and it doesn't cost too much and all that. Because the last thing I want is for you guys to scare yourselves from painting, because I've been there, I've done it, and it took so much work and effort and coaching to get out of it. And I do this channel and the work I do to try to save you guys that scare and having to work through the resistance. So go for the ones that you feel comfortable with, and it's probably better to go slightly fewer or slightly lower than the one that you're absolutely desiring, and then work your way up rather than start from the top and intimidate yourself. I hope that makes sense. In the next episode, I'm going to talk to you guys about what palettes, the physical palettes like this, should you go for as your first palette. I'm going to talk to you guys about all the options, the pros and cons of each, to help you figure out which one is the right choice for you. So I will see you in that episode. Thank you so much for watching this video. Links down below to the color palettes that I've recommended in this episode. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye!